It does seem really strange to be talking about the return of the Premier League when we still have this World Cup ongoing. And obviously, normally when there's a World Cup, we still have time to have that break in the summer before the football season starts.
Yep.
But looking at how things are, the state of play with the Premier League, Arsenal, as we know, top of the table, 5 points clear from Manchester City, who come into the next round of games following a defeat to Brentford. I had to just mention that.
It was a long time ago.
It does. I remember being at the game and thinking, oh, curses this World Cup. You need momentum. This is a great victory to sort of build upon. But anyhow, what intrigues you then about the return of the Premier League in terms of where you feel teams are at and what teams may have benefited from this break that we've had? Those sorts of questions.
Well, I think first and foremost, having a break, look, there's still a lot of these teams that have had players on international duty because of the World Cup. But there will also be an element of coaches having a lot more time to work with their teams and correct some of the problems. Some teams not scoring enough, some teams conceding way too many. Mm-hmm. Now, I was looking at the bottom 5 teams now, and this is quite predictable, really, but the bottom 5 teams have all got the worst goals for column. Now that's a telling factor. How can Everton, as a football club, have 11 goals through 15 games now? That is such a bad return. All of them have got less than a goal a game.
Well, I think if you're looking at any of them, then the alarm bells are Wolves, aren't they? 8,
Wolves
not even
bottom.
to double figures yet from 15 games.
Yeah.
Now, they have a new manager coming in with Julian Lopetegui.
Yeah.
It's a funny situation, isn't it? Because normally, if it was a normal season and a manager departs, a new one comes in, they have to hit the ground running. They've got very little time to really do anything. It's a day-to-day thing. But because they've had this break, Lopetegui's had a lot more time, a bit like a pre-season in a way, to prepare his side to go again. So that's a massive benefit for him, for example. Absolutely.
He's walking into really like a start of a new season, like you said. And to work with teams, and people have always said this phrase, right? The hardest thing is to put the ball in the back of the net. It's not. It's not the hardest thing, okay? You have to have a bold approach about getting bodies into the 18-yard box. If you're going to play a style of football that you're going to leave players isolated, they are not going to score on a regular basis. So you have to get numbers in there. Wide men have to come from wide areas and get into... If the ball's on the left-hand side and the right winger's standing out on the right wing, he's not going to score from there. He has to get into the 18-yard box. It's like a midfielder then making a run into the 18-yard box. So you can get 4 or 5 bodies into an 18-yard box on as many occasions as you can. I guarantee you your goal uptake will rise dramatically. It just will, because you're doing all the things that you need to do to score goals. And looking at some of these teams, like you mentioned Wolves and the Southampton, but there are others. I think I look at teams and I think, why can't you do certain things? And if you're bad at defending, again, you've got to make sure your team work really hard to get back and double up on sometimes. But he's having the energy. I've been really disappointed this year of some of the teams at the bottom end who have got just such a bad goals for column.
But this is where, when you talk about predictability, there'll be a lot of people listening in saying, well, that's why they are where they are. They're struggling. But you can be in a situation where you don't score that many, but you also can shut out teams. And Wolves had that last season, if I remember correctly. They didn't score loads, but they didn't concede many either. No. And that's been one of Wolves' issues this season, that they've conceded 24 goals. Now, that's not the most by any means. And there are teams way above them in the league that have conceded more. But as you say, if you are conceding quite a lot, you at least have to score just as many just to keep yourself in the game.
You'll go down if you've got less than a goal a game. Not every time, but most of the times you will. So you have to have a bold approach. And the laws of the game are there for you to be attack-minded, because you get so much more reward with VAR and technology, the way it's come in, decisions. I mean, look how many soft penalties we see, how many soft tackles around the 18-yard box. So you've got to be in the opposition's half way more often.
It's not just Wolves, obviously, as we were saying, that are struggling. Southampton and Forest make up the bottom 3. Nathan Jones, well, he's had 1 game in charge of Southampton. That was a 3-1 loss to Liverpool before we had the break for this World Cup. What's also intriguing for the sides at the bottom, in fact every single side, is the fact that they come back, have a couple of games, and then the January transfer window opens up.
Yeah.
So the likes of Nathan Jones and Lopetegui, for example, can start to make an imprint pretty much straight away by hopefully bringing in players that they want and think they need as well.
A lot of clubs will get good support from their, you know, the prize money in the Premier League. We all know it's huge, and clubs are prepared to gamble to somewhat. The top end of the table is interesting because of Arsenal being 5 points clear and then losing their talisman in Gabriel Jesus.
Well, I was going to say, what do they do then, Cass? Because it's a huge blow to lose Gabriel Jesus. He started the season brilliantly. I know he had a bit of maybe a little mini drought.
He didn't score, but he was still playing well. He'd gone like 6-7 games without scoring, but he was still playing really well.
But inevitably, when you're the number 9, people are looking at the fact that you're not scoring. But there is a lot that I've tried to do that with Ivan Toney before, defend some of his form, because you think, well, look at the work he does off the ball and look at work when he's assisting and trying to be a creator, for example. But inevitably, you look at goals and the form that a player is in, and Jesus wasn't scoring as many towards the end. But it's a massive blow for Arsenal. Yeah. What do? Do they have to now bring in somebody to replace him? Or is it just maybe a loan deal, just a short-term gap, because ultimately they want Jesus back?
Well, you gave Eddie Nketiah a new deal, a new 5-year deal. Now, you can trust to some level, but you're in a position that for nearly 20 years you haven't won the league, and it's a golden opportunity that you can't miss out on. I don't believe Arsenal will buy someone as a short stop, you know, just to get someone in to try and give them something a little bit different. I don't think they'll do that, because the whole direction, the blueprint of the football club is to be long-term success and create a team, which I think they've done. They've got a hell of a good side now. If someone comes available, I think if Arsenal were thinking about it and they might go, well, this was going to happen next summer, we're going to do it earlier if we can, I think they'll do it. But it won't be... Look, short-term is pivotal to Arsenal having a chance to win this league. If they get someone in that can fill that void for a while. It depends how bad Gabriel Jesus is, because we always get told it could be 2 months, could be 3 months. He could reappear.
So should they go big? Should they go big on a striker? What about Cody? Did you see a Cody Gakpo working out at Arsenal?
Yeah, I could see a lot of players working out. They're a really good side now. Yeah. What he's done is pretty short of a miracle. You know, just reigniting the football club
completely,
from the fan base to, you know, the run-ins of the club, the transfers, the young players that have been given chances. This club's been just reignited brilliantly by Arteta and many other people at the football club. So yes, I would consider. I mean, most definitely, it's because you're not in this, having this opportunity very often. That are you winning leagues? They're 5 points clear. Imagine if they end up losing it by not bringing in someone, but they'll only do it. I'm sure they'll only do it if they want that person for the long term. It won't be done as a solution on the short term.
Well, they are, I think, the form team, aren't they, in the league? Unbeaten in 8, 5 points clear, as we've already mentioned at the top. They take on West Ham on Boxing Day, the final game of Boxing Day. That's an talkSPORT.
And they got City quite soon, haven't they, Arsenal? Haven't they got into the new year? They get paid Man City.
Possibly, because they had the game cancelled earlier in the season, didn't they, for the Europa League
unless
game.
They've rescheduled it for way later.
But it all kicks off with Brentford against Tottenham, so we've got a London derby to look forward to. That's 12:30. That's every single game covered in some way, whether that's on talkSPORT, talkSPORT 2 or talkSPORT app as well. Liverpool, Cass, they head to Villa Park for their first game back, taking on an Unai Emery side that very different to what Steven Gerrard was, the Aston Villa that Steven Gerrard was.
Yeah, look,
a little bit fearful of that trip as a Liverpool fan, or? Well,
we've been hit and miss, for large parts of the season. We didn't start the season well against Fulham, and we've had some really indifferent performances. We sort of looked like we'd got ourselves back to the closest Liverpool team of last year. Loads of players are coming back from international duty, so I'm hopeful Liverpool will have a really strong second part of the season. But it's going to be, Villa I think Unai Emery was a fantastic signing for Aston Villa. A guy that's been unfairly treated, has been and was mocked to some degree in England about his ability of speaking the language. And I just thought a lot of the PSG stuff didn't help as well, because he actually won a lot of PSG. He suffered a 6-1 defeat at Barcelona when they won the home leg 4-0, which eliminated them. And And that was a mad game. I remember that being crazy. I remember doing that game and thinking, well, how did that... PSG should have gone 1-0 up and then ended up losing 6-1.
Well, he also suffered by the fact that he was the first man in after Arsene Wenger.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at that time, it was already quite a toxic environment at Arsenal.
Well, so it was weird, Nat, wasn't it, that Arteta got the real big backing and yet Emery didn't quite get the same?
Yeah. Indeed.
Maybe they believe more in Arteta.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And they'll all be rubbing their hands with glee because it's all working out so far for Arsenal.